Okay, so when you are taking a listing live, that day can be super, super stressful. And it can be one where there's lots of things that we are able to do to prepare for that go live date for taking a home for sale for sellers live to the MLS, and showings are starting, and there's just a lot of moving parts that day. And so there's ways that you can be very proactive in that process to reduce the stress on yourself. Also very important, reduce the stress on your clients. So to set expectations, and many, some of you are experienced agents and have listed homes before, and you understand what I mean by the day that things go on the MLS, sellers are rushing around and they're still trying to get things put together and the house staged perfectly and ready to show, and they're exhausted. All of us that have been there to help sellers before, it's a day of pure exhaustion. Like many a time sellers are, I would say, often staying up late into the night trying to do those last final things to make the house show awesome, and or those things that they really needed to get done. So there's things that if you can keep from having happen at the last second, helps reduce stress. Also, setting expectations and having control in the situation is incredibly important. So I am a big systems and template processes kind of person. I think we all know that. One of the things, and I will go ahead and share my screen now, one of the things that I have done in the past that has helped tremendously. Can you guys see the standard operating procedures? It's a Google sheet. Is I basically have a line by line, everything to do when getting ready for a listing appointment, when getting ready to take it live. So here are things, and I developed this and I used it as a single agent, and then it was incredibly helpful when I had an admin, because it was very easy to transition them into doing my step-by-step process. But more than anything, it really kept me sane on, okay, what else that I need to do? Some of these items under this pre-list preparation process are a little further out than that right before go live date. Right before it goes live in the MLS. So we won't cover those, but those are things that I wanted to make sure we were following up on. If any additional contractors were needed, if the sellers wanted to use a professional cleaning company, if it's something that your sellers can afford to do, I would highly encourage you to offer and say, hey, I've got a great cleaning company or cleaning person that I work with, be happy to give you their information. You would be surprised how many times sellers will say, yes, I will take you up on that. How much do you think it would cost for them to run through here and do a deep clean right before we go live? Because that deep clean is incredibly important for that show ready state. And it's one of those things that with everything else sellers are doing to prepare their home, it's definitely something they're willing to outsource. And I would say most of the time, depending on the size of a house, so anywhere from 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet, that deep clean, and I'm talking like there's a decent amount of dust on the windowsills and on the blinds and, the coffee table and all of this. I would say typically that ranges anywhere from $200 to $300. And yet sellers are very much so comfortable saying, yes, let somebody else come in and do all of these things, window cleaners. So those are things that we're really trying to get set up and scheduled way prior to day of. And so I'm going to start here just a little bit further down on my list of what it is that we prepare and are working on. So like all of the staging recommendations, those things are all things that we have done previously. And this is really leading up to just the day of appointment. So one of the things that I wanted to, and photos. So photos, I would say a lot of times are gonna be within that kind of 48 hours prior to go live. Now, you all are able to schedule and run your business however you would like. Some agents typically will schedule, some agents will schedule photos where they may happen the week prior, or they might happen on a Monday and then they list on Thursday. So there is a little bit of lag time between those two things. And I would say that a lot of sellers would, they work really, really hard to get it photo ready and show ready. And so they also are like, Elizabeth, don't make me keep this show ready and perfect for 4 days or for 5 days or for a week, because, we have to live here and this is a lot of work to keep it in show state. So note, a lot of time that photo appointment is going to happen within that 48-hour window of going on the market. Again, it's how you design your business. And I don't know, Jessica may chime in with her experience too in taking things live, but a lot of times my clients wanted to make it kind of as close as possible to when they actually go live, so that they had the most amount of time to work on the house and get it ready, and the least amount of time to have to keep it in that picture perfect, show ready state. The other thing I would say about photos appointments and for scheduling those photo appointments, guys, you can tell your sellers, I'm not going to take a picture of your garage, especially if there's nothing magnificent about the garage. Now, if they've got a ton of great built-in storage and it's a really nice garage with like, fancy garage floor paint, and it is a selling factor, take a picture of the garage. But if not, you're not going to take a picture of it. Same thing with a basement storage room. Unless it's a fantastic, like huge selling point, you're not going to take a picture of that. You're not going to take a picture of the closets in the kids' closet, in the kids' bedrooms. And so I also would tell clients that if you're trying to prioritize what to get done before photos, and you're kind enough to let me take photos 48 hours before we're going to go live, so I have more time to do what I need to do with those photos for your marketing, note that you can prioritize what you're doing on that staging preparation list, and you can leave your closets to the end. You can leave that garage, because they are going to need to organize the garage and clean that garage up. That can be one of the last things you do before we go live on the market. And if you need to kind of shove a couple things and set, push a couple things into a closet or into that storage room in the basement for photos, go for it. And then you can pull it out in that 48 hours, and those be those last final things that you do before we go live. Does that make sense? So don't be afraid to give them permission in that for their photos, that is a way that they can prioritize what to get done, because those will be things that'll last, and they'll completely understand, and they will totally take you up on it. So don't be alarmed when you go to your photo appointment if you open a closet door and there's a ton of stuff stuffed in there, and that you've already talked about with the stagers that they need to get that closet nice and neat so it shows very well. Okay. The other thing I would say, and I will note on here about that, because typically for me, it was within that 48-hour window, I would try to have a lot of my marketing already in place and ready and printed, so that I could take it to the photo appointment with me and leave it in the house then. We're going to talk here a little bit further down on a couple of those things would be. But for example, I would put up feature cards around the house. And so I can give you an example of what those feature cards, I think I should be able to give you an example of what those feature cards look like. Let's see if these are updated ones. Yes, so I would put these feature cards around the property, around the house, to make sure I was showing off the things in the house that were going to stay and that were really truly selling features of the house. So main floor laundry, I would always point that out in a house, because for someone that has been, depending on what the price point is and what the move up buyer might be like, that might be a huge thing, and they may not be thinking about how big of a factor that is. But in being more efficient with my time and making day of a little less crazy, I always tried to have these prepared and with me at the photo appointment, so that when the photographer was done, I was able to go around, post those up around the house, and it was a checked off my list. It wasn't something I was trying to rush over and do the day of going live before showing started. The other thing that I really tried to have prepared prior to photos was a disclosure packet. And if you guys have been out showing properties, you probably have seen these. You've already probably seen them if you've been on the MLS and you're looking under supplements. So this is what you're going to upload to the MLS under supplements to provide to buyer's agents, so that they can review A, instructions for making an offer, and B, so they can also see, what the history is on the home. But this is a simple template. So this actual piece was a template in Google. I believe I had it in Word at that time, but all of this with the red would be what I would change. So I would go ahead and complete this pretty much probably like 7 to 10 days out from listing, with the seller's information, the legal description for the property, who the earnest deposit was supposed to be made out to, how the licensee, how I was assisting the sellers, because that's a box that's checked on the contract, title company information. I did have a transaction coordinator and admin that I wanted to have CC'd on all offers coming in, and then my contact info, because this was stuff that would go and that last page of the offer. And I'm trying to give that buyer's agent all the information they need to make it as easy as possible for them to submit an offer. This was kind of, and you've seen a lot of these guys, feel free to go and make a offer cover sheet, however you want to make it, however you want to make it look. I'd also suggest, as you're roaming the MLS and you're looking at different properties, if you see one that another agent has put together that you really like, guys, there's nothing against you going and creating one that looks very similar to it yourself. And often that would be how I would go about kind of the, developing and making things, is to see what other agents were doing and then go and taking that and incorporating it in what I created for myself. But the key things to really hit on are the seller's names for the contracts, legal description, earnest money, who the title company would be, because they're going to ask that information if they do go under contract on who we're working with. And then again, your contact info. So don't be afraid to use what other people have out there. And then again, you're going to have your seller's disclosure. So typically your seller's disclosure and lead-based paint, if it's applicable for that property. So I would have all of this already put together and printed out. And I would print, typically, depending on what the property is. And I know these days with the number of showings that we have, it's hard to tell, but there's times that I would print anywhere from 10 to 15 of them in black and white, nothing super fancy, right? And have them on the counter so that people would have them if they were interested in making an offer and could take them with them as they left. It's also something, guys, that then I had prepared. If I had it done before that photo appointment, it's something that was already ready for me to just upload as a supplement when I took the listing live in the MLS. So the last thing to note here is I would take one seller's disclosure in lead-based paint, and I wouldn't have the cover sheet on that one, but I would write across the top of the seller's disclosure. So right across here at the top in handwriting, usually put a little star in front of it and say, house copy, do not remove from home. And I would leave that next to the stack of the other ones in the home. And the reason for that is when those 10 copies went away, I wanted to make sure that I always had a copy of the seller's disclosure available in the home. That way, if someone was there and it was an agent that maybe doesn't always take the seller's disclosure with them, or didn't have access to it via their phone or something of that sort, and a buyer had a question about the roof or had a question about something in the basement, they could go easily reference it on the seller's disclosure that was there in the house. And I would say that would be something that would be very important. And you probably hopefully you see that when you're going through and showing properties. I always felt like it was super helpful to have a house copy that you could just quickly reference when going through a house. And again, it's those little touches that I think make a big difference to buyer's agents and makes it easier to work with you. But note too that your sellers are going to see that you're going and you're doing those certain things, and you can explain why if they do ask that, hey, I want to make it as easy as possible on buyer's agents, and I want everyone to be able to have the information at their fingertips in case there's anything of concern, and or so that they can go and verify, yes, that roof is 3 years old. That's a huge selling point. So we want to make sure that they've got easy access to know that that's something that's going on with their property. Any questions there, guys? All right. So one more piece on the photo appointment. So typically, this was a lesson learned the hard way a few times. Photos are a thing that even if you in your mind assume that people understand that like there's things that they should do ahead of time and that like everything is going to be photographed, and yet like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in these people's lives as they're getting ready to list their home for sale, and it's easy for them to not realize something or not think about something. And so the way that we kind of got around that is a couple of days prior to that photo appointment, I had sent out an email to them and just let them know some of the things to expect that day of photos. And some of the things, like a lot of that was some of the things that I expected them to do so that we could deal with any of that up ahead of time. So the easiest way to not be retyping out the same email over and over again is to have an email template. And so I had put together an email template with instructions on that day of photos, so that we kind of they were able to read through and see all those bullet points. So one of the big things was that they leave 4 photos. So that was the first bullet point that I put in that email template. And the email template went out to every single time. And it basically said the same thing. I would sometimes change things if they didn't have pets or something. But if it's okay, I'll go ahead and read through this. And then you guys let me know if you've got any questions along the way as we talk about kind of what expectations are. So anything in red on any of the email templates I have are where I would be reminded, or my admin would be reminded, to go in and change that. So obviously she's going to change Jack and Jane to be the name of the sellers. And then we're going to go, let's go through the bullet points. So the photographer prefers that the homeowners leave for pictures. This allows them to move from room to room and capture different angles without worrying about capturing the right arm in the corner of a great shot. To be honest, in my experience, the photographer is able to focus more on the property and get in the zone if she's not worried about asking homeowners or pets to move. Guys, this is incredibly important and crucial. I can't tell you how hard it is. And anytime I had to train an admin on, hey, it's your responsibility to go and be at the photo appointment, to reiterate how much of a big deal it is sometimes to get people out. Because again, they're rushing around and they're trying to do that last little bit of adjustment of pillows or putting out flowers or getting just a little bit more done. I often would, with that photo appointment too, tell my clients that the photo appointment, if the photographer was arriving at 1 o'clock, I would tell them that, hey, our photos are going to start at 12:30 tomorrow. And I'll be there and I'm going to assist with doing any of that last minute of adjustments. So don't you worry about that. I'm going to go around and take care of those last minute adjustments. And that extra 30 minutes really was a buffer for me to go around and do those last minute adjustments. So pull and put, and we can talk about photos and details another day, but put things under the sink, and to really though, to get them out of the house, because it usually took about 30 minutes sometimes if somebody was still there to get them out of the house before the photographer arrived. And to assure them that everything looked great and, oh, wow, you did really, really good job. So building in that little bit of extra buffer would be important. The other thing that was really great about this email template is talking about pets. So you're telling them ahead of time that pets need to either be kenneled or removed from the house, just so that you're not having to deal with that day of photos within that couple of days. And then vehicles should be in the garage or parked on the street. There's so many times where there's been a car in the driveway and then you're like, oh my gosh. And they're like, well, I don't have the keys. My husband has them. He's already at work. And then you're trying to Photoshop a car out of the driveway for photos. I do often ask them to go ahead and turn lamps on for me and all lights on for me and leave the blinds open if they're going to be there just prior to photos starting. If not, we take care of that. And then I asked them to turn off ceiling fans. This is one of the things I'd go through and do myself, but if it was something I could have them do, and I had a lot of type A clients, I asked them to do that ahead of time. And then finally, I would give them some examples of what those photos look like so that they got into the mindset of okay, every single detail is going to stand out in these professional photos that are being taken. Finally, toilet seats. I did often ask that they put those down, but that was something I was always running around and checking. So this email was just really key to make sure that in that last little window, we weren't adding more work to ourselves with editing those photos by not being properly prepared for Photos Day. Any other questions? All right. While we're still on those photos, typically your photographer is going to turn around photos and return those to you within 24 hours. Some of them do it quicker. It is a question when you're hiring your photographer to clarify. If we take photos at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, would I expect to have those photos by 1 o'clock on Thursday, or when would I expect to have those photos in my hands? And the reason that that's important is it is kind of that, you want to make sure when you're taking a property fully live in the MLS that you've got all the photos in there. And it does take a little time to process the photos before you can upload them to MLS. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But that is a good clarity to get from your photographer of what is the turnaround time. But typically for the photographers that I worked with, the expectation is that within 24 hours. And I would plan pretty closely to that and watch for that. And I'd have everything else ready to go and then be waiting on the photos. Okay, so in talking about then what kind of in that window then, so literally, and I tried to get 48 hours out of my clients because it really reduced the stress on me to not have to try to take photos at 1, list it and have it live at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But there were times where you had to do what you had to do. But continuing on with how to be best prepared for the photos piece of things, let me share kind of what it is and how it is that I handled that. So I would, for my clients, you guys know I'm crazy about my folder structures, but basically when you get the photos from your clients, can you guys see this okay on my computer? Anybody chime in for me?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, your photos will come over in kind of depending on your photographer. Some photographers too, and it's again something that you'll learn between different photographers do things differently. But a lot of times photographers would send them over kind of in the order that they took them, and not necessarily in the order that I would want them presented. I would also say sometimes I worked with photographers where they would put them in a certain order, and it wasn't necessarily the order that like I like to present a property in. And so one of the steps that before you hit like, okay, we are going live, if you're someone that will take it live instead of doing a pre-MLS or an incoming, is going in and getting the photos in order ahead of time. And so oftentimes they would come to me where they're kind of in a random order, and I would go through, and again, I would take a screenshot of this and I would reorder them so that we're walking through that house in the order in which a buyer would come into the home. I did have like literally guys, I would take a screenshot of this. You guys know I'm a paper person. Some of you guys are really good at doing things online and not printing them out. But for me, it was easier to take a screenshot so that I could have that in front of me. And then I would go through and say, okay, so I think I want to have this, you know, photo 28 will be my first photo, and that's going to be my lead photo. And then I really kind of like the idea of showing this cute front porch. So that's going to be the second one. And on my printed out version of it, I would number those and note that this photo 28 would be one. And then I would go through and number all of them. And then it was real easy to then right click, rename. And then I could say, okay, this one's going to be 12, tab. This one's going to be 13. This one's going to be 17. This one's going to be 10. And I could just tab through and reorder them that way. Does that make sense? Off of the printed out version I had. So I'll take you to what they actually look like. So I would have them set up here to where they kind of then were in order of how I wanted them to go into the MLS. That way, when I took everything live in the MLS, I could just come in real quick and say, okay. At the time, you could only put in 25 photos, but then I was real quick and easy for me to just upload them already in order, and I'm not in the MLS trying to reorder them. Does that make sense? And I have a whole other training to talk about photography, and I will probably leave a little bit of the details of how it is I walk through, but basically I will, with my photos, start in the front of the house, and then I literally am coming in the front door and just walking through the property so that you can kind of see where you came from, and all the rooms are kind of connected. But it was real quick to kind of walk through what it is, and they're all in order. So it's a real quick, easy, and upload, because tension is high when it's live and active in the MLS, and you want to make sure all of those photos are in there properly. So when the email alerts, because as soon as the property goes active in the MLS, an email alert's going to go out to all of the buyers that are registered with searches for that. One of the other things that I like to do for marketing is on each of the pictures, I would do photo remarks. And so in order to be able to quickly upload these into the MLS after I've added the photos to MLS, I would have them already set up here in a Word document, and then I could just copy and paste. So this again was something that I was doing, and I would match it up picture by picture so that the first photo remark is what went with the first photo. Sorry guys, and I'm flipping through a bunch of stuff. And then the second with the second photo kind of a thing. So this was part of what I was doing once I got the photos. So after they came back to me, between when I got the photos and when I took it live in the MLS, whether that was 4 hours on those crazy days or 24 hours or so, because the sellers gave me a little bit more time before we actually took it live. This was all stuff I had done as much ahead of time as possible, so that when I actually hit go live in the MLS, I just could copy and paste all the way through. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Oh, and I apologize. The other thing I would take if I could, because the window was small enough, was I would take and deliver that sign and lock box at the time of photos so that it would be there. Even if it was where I would ask that the sellers not put the lockbox out until they were ready for showings to start. I wanted it on the property so it wasn't waiting on me when I took it active to be able to get there before somebody could have access to the property. You also can, whether you are doing it incoming or pre-MLS or just taking it active, you can go in and write your MLS remarks ahead of time. This was something that when I had an admin and I was taking 3 listings live in a matter of 2 weeks, she would have me go and write the remarks for stuff like weeks and weeks in advance. So that was another thing that I wasn't trying to do as I was taking something live. And if you guys in MLS, you guys, that's the little paragraph that each house has on it talking about the house. Okay. Any other questions on kind of the process here? So when you're taking something live, again, we've already got the seller's disclosure already prepped. We've got our photos ordered. We've got any photo remarks if we're going to do those ready. And then it's the MLS listing we've already pre-populated, and we've got all of it's saved to our, you guys know what I'm talking about. Let me go in and I'll show you. And by what I mean by remarks, we used to have it really hard back in the day, when we would go, like we were walking, uphill both ways to school. And back when us really, all of us that are been in the business for a while, we only had like 360 characters that we could, okay, and of course I don't have any that are in my work area. I apologize, guys. But you can save them if you're gonna do an input. Let's say we can say add new. Not roster, sorry guys. Can you tell that so you can go in and say, I want to fill from a previous listing or fill from real list. If you want to fill from a previous listing, you would just put in the address. I'm going to use my own address. Why isn't it working? Oh, because I have active. Because I feel so rusty with the MLS because it's not like it was when I was back in the day. Okay, so then you're choosing, like you're going to say it's going to be active when you actually take it live. You can come in here and make all of the different changes and fill out all of these things ahead of time. And I highly, highly suggest that you've got it all filled out, prepped and ready to go. And the way that you can do that ahead of time, so you're not doing it when it's like, okay, I told the sellers that we were going to start showings at 5 o'clock and now it's 3:15 and I'm trying to figure out how to fill this out. You guys can go in and fill this all out as you know the information and work on it over a period of days. And whenever you reach a point where you either need to go find more information or you need to move on to another task that day, you can just come over here and save it as incomplete. And when you save it as incomplete later in the MLS, you can come back to it, click on input, and it should be, am I losing my mind? No. Okay, so then when you click on input, you can then select it over here as something that you're able to make changes to until you're ready to take it live, because it won't let you take it live until it has all of the yellow fields filled out. So my admin would always be on me that I had to come in here and complete the remarks. So I would go in and work on my remarks and have those all completed ahead of time. Now you have 2,000 characters instead of 365. But that would be where you've got all of these things already completely filled out and you're not hitting this submit property button if you're gonna take it active and you're not utilizing pre-MLS. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, guys. it's hard, a little hard to show you. How many of you guys, I know Dallas, you've taken something live, is that right? Oh, and Dallas dropped off. Okay, Sarah, I know you've taken a number of properties live for Jim. The other thing I would say, so when you hit submit property, the next thing that pops up is for you to upload your photos and then for you to upload any supplements. And so that is how and why it is super, super helpful to have those already pre-populated and put together so that you can hit add photos. And I would recommend adding photos first and select all of them, click, okay, it's going to upload them all. And then you could click save so that you're sure that an email blast, if it goes out, it's going to have all of the photos with it. I often would do that. And then I would go back in and one by one add the photo remarks, just to make sure that I was time sensitive to that email going out. So let's go back to our standard operating procedures. Any other questions? I am sharing my screen again. And okay, guys. So, oh, did you guys?
Sorry, I was just going to ask you a quick question.
Sure.
For the standard operating procedures, is there, like, I kind of know just the buyer side. I've not worked with sellers yet. So is there a tool that you use to kind of help learn what all the differences are? Because I know that they're not going to be the same. So is there like a place to go that you recommend getting more information on what a seller needs versus what a buyer needs so that you can kind of create your own SOP in a way?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share with you my full standard operating procedures, right? And I believe Chris and Carolyn will have stuff for you as well that goes over what you need to do on each listing. And kind of to expect like what each of those steps, but I'm happy to provide you with mine with exactly what those steps are. And to be honest with you, Emily, it's one of those things that you just kind of will just add to as you are going through the experience on, okay, this is something that I like to do. Some people don't do feature cards, so that would be something that you wouldn't incorporate in yours. But yes, so I can provide you mine, and then Chris and Carolyn have kind of that checklist of those activities that you'll go through for listing a property. And a lot of it is we're doing photos, seller's disclosure, entering it in the MLS. Next would be showing time and showing instructions, which is what I was going to go over next. Because you've got to enter it in the MLS. Typically, you can there's ways before where you could put it in showing time for the showing instructions for buyers agents ahead of time. But most of the time, the easiest way that I found was to wait till you got it in the MLS, and then it would generate the listing in showing time automatically for you. And then you could just go in and make updates to the showing time. So let me show you that, if that's okay. So yes, Emily, does that answer your question? We've got resources that you can go and make those changes or make your own standard operating procedures.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so the next thing, after you enter it in the MLS and you take it live, so you've filled out all of that MLS information, which the PC coaches will help you with how to fill that out properly. Then the next step is entering it in showing time. And so that process looks a little bit where you've got showing instructions and you're able to go in and say what type of appointment it is, and you're setting up all of these things. And again, when you created an MLS and showing times are connected. As soon as you created an showing in MLS, it sends a message to showing times to say, hey, create a record for this property in showing time. And then it's got no showing instructions in it. And so you have to be pretty timely. Once you take it live, you've got your photos you upload your supplement real quick because you've already got those ready. And then you're going to go over and already have your showing instructions ready so that you can quickly update that, because somebody cannot schedule an appointment until you have those showing instructions in place. And you will start getting phone calls of, hey, why are there no instructions? Like, I want to show it at 1 o'clock. So it's best to just be prepared And the way that I like to make sure that I already had all that information gathered, and again, this is setting expectations and having conversations with your clients well ahead of go live date. So it's kind of in that week before you take it live, and then you're verifying kind of the last 48 hours. Okay, we're still planning on starting showings at 5 o'clock. Is that correct? Kind of a thing. But I had a template that I would fill out with my clients. And this is my template. I wouldn't share it with them so much, but it was what I would use to fill out what dates. So I would, on this template and talking to them, to say, we're going to start showings on Friday the 9th. And on Friday the 9th, it's going to go in MLS at, we're going to put it in the MLS at 1 o'clock on Friday the 9th, is for it to go live in the MLS by 1 o'clock. And that was me working off of when I would have my photos and when I'd have time to get through what I needed to do. And then showings are going to start on the 9th at 5 p.m. We are going to do an agent tour. All of those things would be things I'm capturing on when I was delivering these different things to kind of schedule myself. But then I had this section down below where way ahead of time, I'm able to ask the client what their comfort level is with showings. Did they want to be texted to be notified of showing requests? Do they want a call? Do they want an email, or multiple, each of those kinds of things? Because those are settings that you're going to put in showing times. I'd also say, is this a property where you're okay with it just being a go and show, meaning that they don't have to approve a showing before it starts? Or do they want to be notified, but the buyer's agent can just go ahead and go and not have to wait for approval? Or is it where it needs to be appointment required, where the buyer's agent has to get an appointment approved by the sellers before they're given showing instructions and are able to enter the property? Or finally, is it one of those higher end properties or something that's got really special circumstances that it needs to be where the listing agent is present for those showings? And again, guys, with that, how do we handle showings? This is a conversation that happens many days in advance and a strategy piece, right? With this crazy market, a lot of times we would coach or consult our clients to say, hey, for the first 2 days that you're on the market, or for the first day that you're on the market, is it possible for you and the other family members and pets to go stay with family? Or would you consider renting a hotel so that you guys can just plan on being out of the house and not worry about bedtime for little ones, or having to come home and trying to eat dinner or anything of that sort? And so for the first 2 days, can I have it to where I can just have it be a go and show, so we can make it as easy as possible to get everybody in? So it doesn't have to be where if you select one of those, it's for the entire time. Okay, does that make sense, guys, on what those instructions would be? So this is, again, us gathering the information, and then you're going to put it into showing time. The other is time restrictions. So I like to set expectations, and that's where if we're starting showings at 5 o'clock on Friday the 9th, and then we're going to cut them off. So the last showing, what are you comfortable, seller, with the last showing? And they'd say, well, if we can be back home by, and this is if they're coming back home, if we can be back home by 8:30 to be able to get kids in bed, kind of a thing, then I guess 8:30. Note that the end time that you're setting up cannot be the end time. Like, you need to work in a buffer for the fact that people's end of their, so the last showing would really be maybe 8 to 8:30. So that they would be out by 8:30 and your clients could come home. Note that people don't always leave the house when their showing time is up. So leave a little buffer there. But see how, too, that would make a really small window to try to get a lot of people through. So it would be better if you could communicate to your clients if it's an option for them to stay elsewhere that first couple days of showings. It really helps with expanding that window that you can get the most amount of people through. So I would typically do, when I'm setting up what are showing time restrictions, I would do kind of the first couple days, or I would look like on a Saturday and a Sunday, what does it look like? And then on a work day or school day, what does it look like? And so those would be two different things that I would capture kind of in that time. Here, length of appointments. This is, again, where you're going to be advising your clients. In the current market conditions, I think that we should have 15-minute windows. Or I think in the current conditions, let's do 30-minute windows, but with the ability to have them overlapping. And then I'll post a note that, they really need to wait until the previous person's out of the house, buyer is left before they enter. But clarifying with your clients and allowing them to be a part of that decision. Because again, as Randy says, that's not something that you can 100% just decide on your own. You can give them your counsel and your expertise on it, but it is something your clients really need to be involved in saying, okay, we are going to do 15-minute windows. Or if your clients say, I don't feel comfortable with that, let's do 30-minute windows, but allow them to overlap so that if somebody comes and gets done early, the next person can kind of go in and start, kind of a thing. Lastly, this is a little bit different with as crazy as the market is, and yet not every house flies off the market. And so that would be notice for appointments. So if you can gather from your clients ahead of time how much time they need to get out of the house. This is a question you're asking earlier in the week. Okay, when we start showings on Friday, how much time do you need when you get a showing a request? Would you be able to get out within an hour? Would you be able to get out within 2 hours? I would say an hour is pretty typical because they should already be kind of aware that they're going to have showings, kind of a thing. Okay, so we've got this filled out so that when we go live, we pull out this template and we're able to go through and we're able to enter in our client's information, name, phone number, email address, which we have, that's how they want to be notified, text, email, or phone call, and then, which is showing voice. And then what we want for those notices, so how much lead time we want for notice, maximum appointment length, which would be where you would select how much time they can have for each showing window. And then if you want to have overlapping showing times, and that's where you would select whether or not to have overlapping or not. This is also where you would enter any showing restrictions. So you're going to click here and add any showing restrictions. And that might be where you're going to say on these dates, you're not going to be able to start showings until after 8 a.m. or until after 9 a.m. kind of a thing. So that's where we're going to be entering the showing restrictions that we captured here for our start date and our end date. Because I believe, guys, people can show starting at 8 a.m. All the way up to, so yeah, I think that they have, they can start at 5 a.m. if you don't go in and block those out. And then they can show all the way up to 11:45 p.m. So you will want to go in and set up those restrictions, because otherwise you might get a phone call from your client saying, why do I have a showing set up for 10:30 p.m.? If that makes sense. So then the nice thing is, though, that this, again, the day of go live, if we've got all this information and we've got it organized in a way, it's real quick and easy then to just walk right through adding those restrictions and keep on moving. Okay, and then you've got your other fields that you're filling out for your showing instructions and those kinds of things. Any questions there, guys? Okay. At that point, I know that sounds a little like simplifying, but those are kind of the tips and tricks and the things that, like, having those templates in place, doing those steps as much in advance of when you're actually hitting go live in the MLS really can simplify and make it such a smoother process to where you really literally are, okay, I'm confirmed that everything looks good in the MLS. I'm ready to hit submit. And I'm ready to immediately upload my photos in the order that I want them in. I've got my seller's disclosure already ready to go and uploaded, because if you don't upload those immediately as you put it on the MLS, it is where you're going to get more phone calls from your buyer's agents saying, hey, do you have a copy of the seller's disclosure? My people really like this one. How many offers you got working? And it's just one more thing that you could get a phone call about. So having that entered in there immediately saves you phone calls, and it's you presenting the property as best as you possibly can to represent your clients as best as possible. And then again, having your showing information and what that stuff is readily available is really, really helpful, so that you can just quickly enter that information and buyer's agents are able to immediately start scheduling showings. And you get to have that and having those conversations ahead of time, to where you've already talked to your clients that we're going to put it in the MLS at 1, we're going to start, and I'm going to block all showings so nobody can schedule a showing until 5 o'clock, so that you are able to help control some of that chaos, is really, really helpful. Okay, any other questions, guys, that I can kind of help answer? And I am happy to provide templates and such to you, because I know how much of a great help that was for myself. All right, you guys have any upcoming listings?
Yep, I'm hoping to get one on here in the next month.
Excellent, excellent. Well, congratulations. And
Thank you.
and that this next month, and the next month will be good timing for you too, before buyers get to, it'll be a hot and heavy part of the market. And hopefully you'll have some good closed properties for your appraisal value. So good luck,
Absolutely.
Albert. Let me know how we can help support you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, guys. Any other questions? If not, I will give you 11 minutes of your day back.
I just hopped on, but if you have any templates, I would love to see what those are so I can implement that with my listings.
Yes, and I will. It's recorded, Alina, so I will be sure to have Kendall send it out to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. All right, guys, have a great Thursday. If you are in the PC program, don't forget group coaching 1 to 3. And then tomorrow they will be in the office on the plaza for meet and greet at 1 o'clock, and then training right after that. So hope to see you then tomorrow as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You are so welcome. You're very welcome, guys. Have a good start to your Thursday. Bye.